What's up, Bears fans and draft fans alike? You know, the Bears season ended. We're turning the page to the offseason. In just a couple of days, Danny, we're turning that calendar over to April, and you know what that means. We are just a few short weeks away from Christmas Day, from us draft fans. So we've been scouring the tape and going over, talking about fits and needs for the Chicago Bears and who works and who doesn't. And man, Danny, you've been grinding the tape, man. How was your week, brother?
It's getting there. It's getting there. So obviously, as you know, we've been publishing. You know, we've been talking about them here. I'm publishing some scouting reports on Shimon Draft Scout, and it's coming hot and heavy. You know, I got people hitting me up asking for certain players and some digging up some tape. But yeah, it's April 1st. It's a couple days away. Less than a month for the draft. And you know, if you guys follow here us at the bar room and Draft on Tap, you know, one of my personal favorite guests to have on is someone that I highly respect in terms of what he puts out there in terms of content, because I know he does the work, he does the research. He is the NFL.com lead draft writer and someone that I like to call a friend, Mr. Eric Edholm.
What's going on, fellas? How are you guys?
We're doing great, Eric. Just again, thanks again for being able to jump on with us. I know you've been a busy man. You've been all over the airwaves here in Chicago locally. I'm in Chicago. AC is in Kentucky, but I've been hearing your voice and seeing your name all over the screens here. You've been popping up some names on your mock drafts that has a lot of Bears fans up in a tizzy or excited, if you will, because you know, as you know, we go through this here every year in terms of, you know, focusing on the draft and focusing on the Bears in terms of what they've done so far in free agency and what their needs are heading into the draft. And I think everyone will agree here that defensive line is going to be a primary need for the Bears. And today we'll be covering another position, you know, later on in the show, something that I feel like is a need, but I'm not a big in the first round kind of guy drafting a safety. And I think you and I have talked about this in the past where you know, if you have a team that's had holes up front, like the Bears, in my opinion, do, you can't be using a high pick on a safety, because if you have Ronnie Lott or Ed Reed in their prime back there, if your front seven can't get after the quarterback, I feel like you need to show that out first. But we'll get into that discussion and plenty more here. Again, thank you for joining us here, and welcome to Draft on Tap.
Yeah, you introduced me like that, I'll come on every time. I'm a shallow guy. You just butter me up a little bit, and I'm good to go, man. That's perfect. So no, thank you for having me, buddy. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's good this year. We have one of the earliest draft dates possible, right? It starts the 23rd, I think. So, yep. You know, sometimes we're waiting until like the 28th, and you're just sitting there going, "Oh, come on, man!"
Right.
Well, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, you called it Christmas. It is Christmas. Don't get me wrong. I love the draft, but it's also during the draft, I feel like I'm the guy carving up 300 turkeys, you know, and serving the people who are coming in for their Christmas dinner. You know, like it's a lot of work, but we do it because we love it. So that's why I'm here.
Exactly. And this is this year especially. It's one of those drafts where, man, other than the first pick and you know, and with Fernando Mendoza going to the Raiders, I think everything else is up in the air. So that's why with a lot of what is out there right now, you know, this is, you know, I know you know Greg Gabriel. You know, he always told me this is lying season right now. You know, don't believe anything you hear, and you hear everything from players dropping, from players, you know, rising up. You know, last week it was Ty Simpson was the flavor du jour. He's going in the top 15, top 10. then, and then now, there's other players dropping, so on and so forth. So, in your opinion, is this one of the more unpredictable drafts that you can think of in the last, decade, maybe?
Yeah, and I'll add a little piece to that, and I'd like to hear your feedback. This is a working theory. This is something that I've had for the last couple of years. What you mentioned, lying season, and I think there is some of that to a degree. Like that, we're in that region where, like, I've got a call set up tomorrow night with an executive, and I've got a call to during the day that I'm going to try to get a personnel guy. Like, pro days are winding down, so there is more time. But there's also this is also narrative season. And a lot of us in the media are guilty of creating these narratives, right? And we force feed them, we jam them in there too. So if you have that, and I think that's as much as what's going on as teams feeding fake info, I think there's some of that. You also get some info from agents that's a little puffed up. My client's going to the top 10, guarantee it. Well, it didn't happen, right? I don't know if I should believe your information anymore. Some guys are really good on where their projections are, and some are very fair, So yeah, you've got all that every single year. This year in particular, though, this is it's a different draft. I think that's what I would say is that, even Mendoza, to me, I mean, I think he's my fourth overall player. I think he has a chance to be a very good pocket passer, maybe that Goff Darnold level, but is he that superstar guy? I don't know. And then the quarterback class in general, the running backs are very thin. You have a couple positions that it's like you have that one standout at the top and then a big drop. Edge seems strong to me. Receiver seems pretty strong. Tackle's great at the top. And then after that, good luck. I think there's some developmental guys worth watching, but yeah, there's just a lot of chaos. Heavy on defense, though. I think we'll look back and we'll say, this is a darn good defensive draft. Maybe not the most power-packed of all time, but a lot of depth and a lot of good, useful players who will be starters in this league for, 5 to 8 years. And that's a good career, And so I think if you come in thinking you can get 2 defensive starters and 1 offensive contributor as you look back in 5 years and what did you get out of that draft? That's a pretty fair assumption, I would say.
Yeah, I think this draft falls in line in terms of what the Bears need, specifically the Bears, right? In terms of defensive.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Guys, the interior, there are some guys there. There might be some hidden gems later on in the draft, but there are no, they're top of the first round guys that some might like, some might not like, right? It's just kind of pick your flavor in terms of what you like, defensive tackle. But I think edge. I think safety is a deep class. I think
I agree.
Receiver. I think Ben. It's my opinion that Ben Johnson's out there looking for a dynamic speed guy to add on this receiving core. I think you can find that, late day 2, early day 3. We'll get into that later on, a couple of shows here moving forward. But yeah, I think, and center, obviously with Drew Dahlman's retirement, I know they went and got Bradbury, but I think center is a position that has some depth to it as well. Bears picked up that extra second round pick with the Buffalo trade with DJ Moore. I think that is some ammunition there they could do there, whether, they want to move up, they want to move back, 25 could be an area where if a player that they like is or multiple players they like are kind of falling, they can always kind of move back if someone is itching to get up and get a Ty Simpson in the end of the first round. So it's a very interesting draft for the Bears. I think it falls right in line. I think that also goes hand in hand. And curious, Eric, and your thoughts in terms of why the Bears haven't been so active in terms of free agency, right? Veteran free agency, because obviously the cap situation is one thing, right? But I think they kind of look at this draft and say, hey, we can fill some needs here with some young guys, some cheap contracts, and then move forward with, if we need to make a big splash, some guy out in Las Vegas, we're not going to mention his name here, we can always clear up some space if needed. But if we're not going to get a guy like that, a difference maker, we're not going to do that. We're not going to kick the can down the road like, say, Dallas has done this offseason and some other teams. So curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point. There's as Aaron and I were kind of talking before you hopped on while you were goofing around doing whatever you're doing. There's still free agency is not closed, right? I mean, you still have that as the backdrop, and why force positional needs if the player you don't like isn't there, right? Why stretch it? Why force the issue? I just don't see a value in that. I mean, unless you just have looked at the free agent class at that position and said, nope, there's not a guy on that list I would take. if you're at that point and you want to take a guy half a round or a round higher than he goes, okay, but you also better be darn close to a Super Bowl, which maybe the Bears are. So, but yeah, no, I think obviously this is the kind of draft setup where there should be some pretty good options. And,
yeah,
you know, a trade down isn't waving the white flag, you know, I mean, if it's the right move to make, or if, you know, if there's a short trade up, I don't think they're going to get, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misreading it, but I don't think you're going to see a bold move up. And I suspect there won't be a lot of dramatic trades. Like I just came out with a piece, 5 trades that would make sense for both sides.
You had your GM hat this morning on. I saw that piece.
I did. And like, I really tried hard to make trades make sense for both teams. So I'm looking for teams that want to move up, move down. There's a lot more that want to move down than move up. And it just, you know, so that's always the challenge, but maybe late first round, there's a little more activity. And I guess I kind of forgot the original crux of the question, but the value, I guess, of the positions and stuff, and whether it's, I mean, safety has some really interesting options this year. If you don't get the guy you want, Dylan Thieneman or whoever in round one, I don't see the need to just press the pedal and take your third guy unless he's right next to him grade wise. So I think edge is the same thing. If you don't have conviction on somebody, I wouldn't mind going in a slightly different direction. Yeah, needs are important, but talent is really what matters the most. So, you know, I've fallen into a couple areas in the mock where I've been tempted to go in a different direction, but ultimately pass rusher ended up being kind of where I settled.
Well, let's start right there, right? So obviously edge is a need that a lot of fans and a lot of our fans here, you know, and some of the experts think that the Bears need to go out and get an edge rusher. Now, I'm in the camp saying, hey, it'd be great to get an edge player, and like I said, this draft is deep in some edge players. But I'm a big believer in Austin Booker. I think that at the end of last year, he was one of the better pass rushers on that Bears defense, right? And I think that's something the Bears are kind of, kind of putting their head on their head, saying, "Hey, you know, we got someone here. We possibly have someone here." Again, that's internal development. It's not the splashy move, but just keep an eye on Austin Booker. But we'll go back to your mock, and obviously in your mock 2.0, you had the guy that's very popular around here, and Zion Young from Missouri, from your alma mater, if I'm not mistaken. And
that's right.
Let's get into Zion Young, because he was a guy that him and Damian Wilson were two guys that I always had my eye on coming into the season. Obviously, Wilson that didn't pan out in terms of what he did on the field production-wise, but Zion Young had, I think, a pretty good overall campaign. He's more that bigger, long-limbed, you know, power rusher that Dennis Allen does like, but you know, he's not the typical, you know, burning off the edge, bending
not at all,
pass rusher. So you know, you've gone into him. I've displayed my strengths and positives for Zion Young. Go ahead and let our listeners know what you like about Zion Young. Why'd you have him going here in pick 25?
Yeah, and just to be totally transparent too, I did like the classic draftnik move of buttering both sides of the bread. So I did the mock draft and picked Zion Young, and then I did a separate piece which said what would be the ideal first 2 picks. So I guess it's a slightly different assignment, but what would be like the perfect first 2 picks for each team? And I ended up with TJ Parker, and let's start with Young, because I think there's a real merit in what he gives you. First of all, it's a high energy rusher who seems to get better as the game goes on. I mean, if you notice, a lot of his production came late in games. Sometimes he'd be quiet for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden that big backside play in the 4th quarter, or, you know, defending the run well, but then all of a sudden the big TFL in the 4th or something. He's a character. I mean, he's a high, you know, kind of, I think my colleague Lance Zerline wrote he's a note taker, which means like he you know, he has all these grudges he holds against everybody. And you find that people like that often are successful because they're just so determined to prove themselves right and the other guy wrong. And so there's a lot of stuff like about a long arm guy, has a variety of moves. Yep. It's just that it's like you're going to end up seeing a lot of long arm and a lot of bull rush and, like, you know, cross chop stuff. He's good. I mean, he's got moves, but he better have counters because his speed is, you know, just not the quickness that his pro day workout scared me a little, because it was like a 1-7-2 10-second split. and not great jumping numbers, 32-inch vertical, 9.9 broad. You know, they're not horrible. They're just not first round numbers to me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he can't go in the first round. I'm just saying it kind of looked a little disappointing. You know, he's a good athlete. He looks chiseled when you see him. He looks the part, but TJ Parker to me brings a little more juice. I know there's questions about what happened last year. I think, you know, you saw it too with some of the Penn State guys where it was like when things didn't go well, you know, it became this almost self-fulfilling prophecy around the team. And some of those guys didn't play well either. I think he actually played fairly well last year. It's just you didn't see the sack production.
Right.
He's got a little more juice and a little more quickness and still has the same length and roughly the same mass. So they're, again, I'm kind of forcing that pick a little bit too, because I don't know if the Bears love him. I just kind of going on instinct on that one. And maybe there's a better option, but at that point, two safeties have been drafted, and I just didn't have a conviction on the third one. So,
yeah, for me, Zion Young is in there in play for at 25, just like you mentioned. You know, Downtown loves those physical edge guys that can set the edge and with
forceful,
the long range and all that stuff. Yeah, and again, he's a power rusher. You're absolutely correct. He's got to develop that counter move. You know, but the two guys I earmarked, if they go edge, and one of the guys you just touched on was TJ Parker, and he was one of my top 5 edge guys coming into the season, coming off of a monster campaign. It was 11 sacks last year. I believe it was a 19 tackles.
He was the top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Everyone was raving about him like he was, you know, it was like him and Peter Woods were going to go 1-2.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And then something happened, whatever, you know, that's where the scouts now get on campus and ask questions and see what what's there. So, but for me, Parker kind of redeemed himself. I'm curious your thoughts at the Senior Bowl. I mean, we saw what he could do there, particularly the one-on-one stuff, you know, where he, you know, I forgot which, I think it was the Maryland tackle. He just one-armed him onto his rear end, there, his one-on-one drill. So, you know, I think that's showed some of what he could do there. But the kid I really like, and someone that no one's really talked about, and specifically for the Bears, and now I've seen him kind of moving up on some of these mock drafts, is Falk out of Auburn. I think this is a guy just 20 years old.
He's there.
That's the thing. If he's there, because, you know, he was late first round, and all of a sudden he goes on. Talk about what he did at the combine, the measurables, and all the testing and all that stuff. And I think he's a guy that at 20 years old, he's got the size, he's got the length.
Crazy.
You know, another one that was coming off a pretty good season last year, had a down campaign this year. But to me, Eric, he's already a good run defender, right? It's at 20 years old. And that's the thing with these young edge guys is they come in trying to get after the quarterback. They don't play the run. But this guy comes already prepared to play the run. You can always coach him up to be a better pass rusher. So I think that's the guy for me. If he's there, and you just touched on it,
that's the guy that I can't get past the Cowboys and Eagles in my mocks.
Yeah,
like I just think there's no freaking way they're going to pass on this kind of a talent. I keep wondering, almost like the Bengals at 10. You know, like could he go that high? I know he doesn't have that buzz this right now, like that everyone's, you know, looking for or whatever, but all those things you just listed, especially the age, and already has the natural mass and athletic ability and seems to harness it pretty well. Like I saw games where he looked good. I mean, I didn't watch him and go, oh, you know, it just, you saw some stuff where, yeah, he'll finish that play next year. This could have been a little better, but like, it wasn't bad. I don't know. I thought he was pretty encouraging, honestly. And same thing, Auburn, you know, kind of went sideways. The coach got fired. Everything got, you know, I mean, I'm not blaming it on I'm not saying the players shouldn't be playing hard after that stuff happens. I'm just saying when it's, you know, when you start springing leaks, you take on water and that can affect the whole product. So you saw that at a lot of top prospects this year, guys that you mentioned, like coming into the year, you really felt pretty good about traits wise. All those lists that we made up over the summer about like the first round possibilities, you know, he's taken a little bit of a hit, but I'm with you. I would jump all over him. In fact, I mean, he might be one of the few guys worth moving up for if he gets to a certain point, just given the number of teams that need that kind of player.
Right. That's okay. That excites me. So before I move on, AC, I don't want to take up all Eric's time. I tend to, you know, to hog up the airspace here. So if you want to have a couple questions for Eric before
I mean, you've covered quite a bit of it. One of the big things I wanted to hear from Eric, since you cover much more than just the Bears, and yes, this is a Bear-centric draft show.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the whole NFL. So I'm hearing a lot about positional value especially with this draft where you see running backs in the top 2 or 3 of big boards and off-ball linebackers and things like that. Are you hearing that throughout the whole league, or is that something that us fans and some of the media guys are we're kind of squinting to see it? Because like Ruben Bain looked really great during the season, and then his measurables didn't really match up, but the tape looks fantastic on the guy. I just, to me, is this a thing that you're hearing around league circles as well?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were saying earlier. Like the kind of the fingerprint of this draft is one that you don't see every year, and there's some unusual qualities about it, right? Where players, you have a couple of elite, probably the few blue chip guys are outcasts in some ways, right? Like Jeremiah Love's a running back. Do we love running backs to that level? Are we there yet? No, we're still on the way back up though. I mean, Saquon Barkley was the number 2 pick in the draft. I don't think you could say it was a reach. I mean, the guy's been good. Bijan Robinson has been terrific, right? So I think at the time, Jahmyr Gibbs was seen as a horrific reach by some. And I was sitting there thinking, if he was a wide receiver, nobody would care, and he's going to touch the ball more than a wide receiver. So like, I think we have to kind of alter our appearance a little bit here. Obviously, Colston Loveland, you could say tight end was a non-value position. I think both the Colts and Bears are thrilled with those picks. They're getting 2 good football players. Anyone who overthinks Caleb Downs, even if honestly, if I'm being fair, I didn't think he played quite as well this year as he did the year before. But still, my God, I mean, like, he's a really good player.
Yeah.
Like, take good players, and I understand the positional value of it, but this year does have some, and Bain with the arms and Cassius Howell with the arm length, and, Spencer Fano, the left tackle discussion is very unusual with some of the dimensions and where the guys have played before. So I know we have these debates every year, but I think you're right to point out that, some unusual qualities, and most of those guys will pass muster, and I think most of them will go roughly where we're expecting them to go. But there might be one. There's not going to be a Shedeur Sanders-like moment in this draft with one of the top prospects, but there might be a guy who slips that we're surprised by, and I haven't figured out who it is yet.
Yeah. So today, Ben Johnson at the owners' meetings threw out something, in his press meeting said, throw out a position that, is a need, but a lot of us thought maybe that they'd kind of squeak by, this season. Throw out left tackle out there, right? Obviously, Ozzie Trapillo, there's no guarantee he's coming back, going to play LL next season. So he threw out that as a deep need. Now, you just mentioned, in terms of some guys that be dropping, it could be a surprise pick here and there. Obviously, we are defensive centric here on the Bears, but if you had to pick a position group, doesn't have to be tackle, but any position group that you can see the Bears kind of shocking everybody and going with in the first round, what would be your pick?
That's a great question. Yeah, so you're kind of saying defense is off limits, right? Because
because we're all thinking defense,
right?
What if you swerve and go a different position? And if Ben Johnson,
a wide receiver would be surprising, but not shocking to me.
Exactly.
I mean, I get it. Like you want to commit to this defense, and the last several first round picks have been offense, and a lot of the higher picks have been. You can't live like that forever. I understand there is a dimensionality. What's the word I'm looking for? Like where you have to look 3-4 dimensionally here and think, how have we drafted? What patches or holes do we need to patch up? But at the same time, like if there's a great receiver you love, I guess and there's not a defensive player that that you feel like is a great fit for you and could possibly vie for a starting spot week 1. Yeah, I could see it, but that would, offensive tackle would be the other one that makes some sense just based on what Ben's saying. But they have some options there too.
Yeah. I know Joel Klatt put out a mock draft and had them taking Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, and Bears fans were not very happy about that.
If you see him play, you might be happier. But the problem is you only get him for, about 62% of the season. So that's the problem has been with him.
The other thing go ahead, AC. Go ahead.
With offensive tackle, and I've told Danny this. I'm a Kentucky guy. I'm right outside of Lexington.
Yep.
So I'm kind of pulling for Jedrick Wills to work out because he's a local guy.
Sure.
Followed Damian Harris to the pipeline to Alabama. I hoped it always worked, and I would love to see that work out. But yeah, offensive tackle it's kind of a polarizing position in this draft because I loved Caden Proctor like all year every time I saw him. And then it just seemed like, I don't know if the buzz is necessarily there. Do you see Spencer Fano as a left tackle? I know they were talking about him with arm length, maybe kicking him inside. What are your thoughts on the offensive tackle position?
Yeah, great question. And there's obviously it's important because it's going to kind of shape the top of the draft, starting with probably Cleveland at 6. And so, yeah, I mean, I think at the top, there's some really interesting prospects. You could see possibly 7 or 8 go in round 1. I think 8 would be a stretch, but 6 wouldn't stun me and 7 is possible. So Francis Mawanoa, big right tackle, was the kind of the guy that they ran behind in key situations. I think he's a capable pass blocker, good run blocker, and I think he's a very solid pick. Caden Proctor, you mentioned, is a little more variance with him, snap to snap, game to game. There's some gaps in his play, I think, and there's some debate about guard or tackle for him. But man, I'm mostly with you on that. I think he's got the goods, and I think with good coaching, Pittsburgh would make a lot of sense. I have him there in my mock, and I just sort of feel like they can work with him, and Mike likes those sort of big guys, those big athletic dudes. So Monroe Freeling's the hot name. He could go very high, maybe starting with Cleveland at 6. And there are a number of teams in that area. I know Detroit thought maybe 17 was possible. You heard them talk about moving Penei Sewell over to left tackle. It's almost like they feel like the chances of them getting him or like a true left tackle is slim. So I mean, I think Spencer Fano, I had one scout say he's a 5-position player. And I said,
oh, wow,
that's great. But that to me says he's not a left tackle then, and he kind of laughed, but like, it was more like, it depends on the team and 32.5-inch arms aren't going to work for a lot of teams. Now the Patriots obviously bucked that trend and Super Bowl didn't go great. I mean, I know he was a rookie starter and played the whole year and had some good moments, but Campbell had his moments where that arm length did really show up as a problem. Yeah. And
Vrabel sticking beside him though. Yeah, I liked Campbell last year coming out.
Yeah, I did too. I just thought he'd be a great left guard and maybe it could work at left tackle, but I mean, I like the Arizona State kid's really interesting, but he's green. Blake Miller, I don't know. I'm not as in love with him as other people, but I get why people like him. And it just feel like after the top 8 or 9 or so, you're going to have some questions about the quality. It seems to drop off a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's for me, the problem with left tackle in this class, particularly, there's not many of them, right? I think Cameron Proctor can play left tackle, maybe guard. We'll see. But for me, Proctor's a left tackle. I think Lomu from Utah.
He's played 2 years.
Fanu's teammate. I think he could play left tackle. Freeling is the guy I think everyone's going to fall in love with because of his athletic traits. He's got the size, and length, but just a 1-year starter. Struggled last year, I believe, at right tackle, and then moved him over to this year to left tackle. So, those are the 3 guys that I think can play left tackle. So that's something. Other guys that for me are right tackles, and which the Bears obviously don't need. So I think that's where. That's why I always thought maybe you'd go into the season just kind of maybe ride the Braxton Jones, maybe take a flyer on Jedrick Wills, or Theo Benedict, see what happens, and kind of fill in for a year. But then with Ben Johnson, because when Ben Johnson speaks here, everyone's ears kind of perk up because he's not like the previous regime where he doesn't really mumbles his words and not sure what he's talking about. He will tell you exactly what he's thinking. And I think when that came out today, I think everyone's like, whoa, okay, maybe we can. Maybe overthinking it.
Recalibrate a little, yep.
Right, but let's get back to the defense, right? And we touched on earlier today. Later on, we'll be talking my top safeties, and as described earlier, and everyone here who follows me knows I'm not a drafted safety in the first round, especially if you have holes up front. But this draft class, in my opinion, has 2 of the premier safety prospects to come out. And again, some time. I can't think of two safeties. And if it wasn't Caleb Downs in this draft, I think Thieneman from Oregon would be a top 10, top 15 player.
I think you're
he
right.
might still be a top 10, top 15 player. So now this is where, all right, if one of those guys drops, and then also there's the talk with Caleb Downs in terms of the medicals, and obviously we couldn't verify what we heard, but there's a possibility of a degenerative ACL. Again, is it Lion season? Is someone trying to drop his stock so they can fall into their laps? Who knows? But I think these two safeties are premier players. I think these two are going to have a long and successful career. Plus, we haven't talked about guys in this second day and third day. So just your thoughts on terms of Thieneman and Caleb Downs. I know you already touched on Downs a little bit, but Thieneman to me was a guy that when I watch his tape, it's like, holy cows. And then he went to the combine and put on a show.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those two?
Thieneman, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry that my ear kind of popped out right as you were saying it. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I really liked him, and especially I didn't get to watch him until later on. And I kind of was like, wow, okay, I see why everyone likes him, especially with so many teams using the split safety stuff. And you got to kind of be a little bit of both. And I'm not saying that, but there's certain guys who are center fielders, and there's certain guys who, have certain schemes but I think, and especially if you go back and kind of watch his time at Purdue, you saw he was more playmaker there, but the range is obvious. The intelligence and the quick trigger is obvious. The athleticism is there. I'm starting to think he doesn't make it to Chicago. Every time I keep going through, like the Vikings take him or Cowboys or somebody, so I mean, we'll see, but I don't want to sound like I hate the kid. I don't. I did not see a first round safety when I watched Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm not as attuned to what they're trying to do for him, what they asked him to do, what he can do. There's always that question. And safety, to be honest, has been a position that's probably been one of my 2 or 3 weakest. If I went back and looked at my score sheet of who I was closest on and who I had overrated, underrated, I would say safety. I have a good number of misses compared to other positions. So I'm willing to, admit that I've misjudged this position. I haven't looked at it in the right, context as far as what the league wants and stuff. But he forced some turnovers for sure. He's a big bodied kid. He dominated at that level, or, most of the time it felt like it was, you didn't have a hard time picking him out on the field, which I like, when you're watching a little bit lower level of competition. Are they one of the better players on the field, and you saw that, but I also felt like his coverage instincts were just a little shaky for me, and he'll get there. I mean, I think it's just, it's a matter of time, but that's a kid that I would be more willing to take a bet on with the 56th pick or something, not the 25th. That's just me. And
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And that's why I have 2, first round grades on Caleb Downs and on Thieneman. But for me, I don't see it there either. And I you talked about the turnovers he's creating, 9 forced fumbles in his career.
It's impressive.
Got the length, size, speed, and all that stuff. But the instincts to me are a little bit not there on the same par as Caleb and as Thieneman, and also some of the quick trigger stuff, transitioning out of and when to come downhill, so on and so forth. But yeah, he can be coached up. Those things you can coach up because he's got the traits, he's got the athletic talent. So, but I'm with you. He's more of a day 2, second round pick for me. So we'll see where that goes. So I have one more question before we let you go, Eric. AC, do you have a question for Eric before I ask my final one?
Just real quick while we're on the safety position, Eric, you're a Missouri guy. Do you follow them? Do you watch them every Saturday? You die hard or how big?
I try to. It's hard. First of all, I got 2 kids who play soccer every damn Saturday in the fall. So I do tape the games. I do get to them eventually. I'll be looking at my phone if I'm not watching, but yeah, I do tend to get my Mizzou time in when I can.
Well, firstly, are you old school Mizzou Big 12 or are you new school with the SEC?
Big 8.
Oh, he goes way back.
Fall of 93 was my freshman year. So yeah, I turned 50 in December. So
well, you look great for your age, Eric.
I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I'm coming on next week, you guys. I don't even care if I get an invite, No, it's I've suffered a lot, but with the football team's gotten better and the basketball team's gotten worse. So just
well, while we're on it with Missouri, a guy that I liked at Arkansas We're talking
Jalen
safeties. Catalon, I mean, when he was at Arkansas, they were talking about this guy like he was first or second round. I got to be honest, I don't watch a ton of Mizzou unless they're playing my Wildcats. What did he look like to you this year?
Not great, but he still has the instincts. I just don't. I think the wear and tear and stuff seems to have caught up to him a little bit. I'm not saying he can't make it in the league, but I think it's going to have to be as kind of a core special teams guy,
okay,
fourth safety kind of thing. Early in his career, there was a lot of buzz about him. Like you said, the big plays, I mean, he was generating and kind of the versatility in his game, but I don't know that they had a safety issue. They had a safety issue this year a little bit in terms of figuring out
right.
like,
I didn't even go to Kentucky and I say,
okay. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. The NIU kid, Santana Banner, ended up playing pretty well, transfer. But they were kind of putting guys in the bet, like in whatever holes they needed. So I think he was playing deep a lot more. And they got burned on some deeper pass plays this year. So I think he's going to be undrafted if I had to guess because of the age.
Yeah.
But he'll definitely get he'll be signed. The guy who's blown up is Khalil Jacobs, who wasn't invited to the combine, but has got like 12 visits and had a 40-inch vertical. Let's see if I can pull up his number real quick. But I mean, again, a nice player in college, but like he came in as a transfer and 40-inch vertical, 11'1" broad. He did run a 4.77, which is a little disappointing for a 6'1", 220-pound guy. I mean, he's going to have to be that nickel linebacker kind of guy, I think, or maybe a safety. But those jumping numbers will get him in a building for sure. 27 bench press, 32-inch arms, 10-inch hand. He's an impressive athlete. So I think they also were trying to figure out the best way to use him. He was a blitzer, but he made some plays.
Yeah. So like last year, I don't remember, Eric, we were talking towards tail end of our visit about Luther Burden, what happened with Missouri, and then how it was a disappointing season. And lo and behold, the Bears taking a second round, promising rookie campaign. So there's one Missouri player that I want to ask you about, someone that I personally have been following throughout this process, caught my eye at the Senior Bowl.
Let me guess, Chris McClellan.
You got it.
There you go.
Chris McClellan. He's the guy that I've kind of deemed, if the Bears don't get the D tackle in that first round, which doesn't seem like they're going to go, he's a guy for me can play a 1-tech, could be a 3-tech, and a second round range, and maybe even third. I think he's going day 2. I'm not sure if it's second or third round, but I think he's a guy that really came on this year, caught my eye at the Senior Bowl, took on and went to the combine and really measured well. I think tested well as well. He's a guy for me. He's one of my guys. Keep an eye on day 2 for the Bears, and tell our audience about Chris McClellan.
Yeah, Florida transfer. Did you came in and played well right away and ended up kind of becoming one of the more indispensable guys up front. I mean, he just, it just felt like kind of with Young too. It was like when they needed a stop, he made a play, and which is rare for a D tackle too. I mean, to be able to kind of have those kinds of plays, but he had some quiet stretches, but was sort of functionally doing his job and big hands. Did you see my tweet from Mobile? They were doing bag drills. The D line was, and so I saw the bag kid was a high school football player, and it was a big kid. And this is a kid probably playing offensive line. I would say he was about 6'3", 250-ish pounds. He was a good, well-built kid, and he was getting knocked back by a few. So after the drill, I said to him, "Who hit the hardest?" He goes, "The Mizzou kid knocked the beep out of me." I don't know if it's a family show or not. So yeah. And I was like, okay, that's a tweet. That's I've been in this business long enough. It's not a story, it's a tweet, so
yeah.
But yeah, Chris he's a neat kid too. I mean, he seems like he's got a good personality. He seems like a real nice kid, and but salty too. I mean, fiery guy. Go watch the end of the Auburn game or the trying to remember the other one. There was another game that kind of came right to Vanderbilt. Yeah, Vanderbilt too. And those were both good. Like, you want to see his vinegar side? There it is, but
You're thinking more one tech or three tech?
Yeah, so he could play both. I mean, for a 330-pound guy to be able to play three in college was pretty darn impressive. I think he's probably more of like a nose or a shade or something like that, but you could maybe, I guess, even try him out as a 5 if you needed him to, you know, if you played a lot of fronts or something. But yeah, I could see him working for the Bears, and he had as many sacks as Zion Young did this past year.
Yep, that's
he made as many big plays as the end did. That's worth something to me, you know.
Yeah, I kept telling him, like, this is the kid I like. I like on day 2, somewhere with that second, third round range.
I think he'll be a third if I had to guess, but it wouldn't shock me if somebody took him in the second. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great
fourth. I guess is a possibility, but I think he'll go in the top 100.
I think you get him in the 4th round if you're the Bears. I think that's a steal.
Be a steal. I like him as a player.
Part of the rotation next year, and I think he'll plug in some of that holds up front. So that was for me. AC, do you have any more questions before we let Eric go?
I think we've pretty much got it covered. Eric, you're welcome anytime. I mean, I know we tried to butter you up some. You can tell I got the SEC accent. So
I love it.
I love talking ball, and NFL.com. You got the credentials, and thanks for coming by, man.
It was my pleasure. Anytime, happy to do it. Love to talk Bears, SEC, Mizzou. Just keep going with the same vibe you did tonight. You guys, you'll have me whenever you want.
Go ahead and plug anything upcoming. I know today you released that the trades that you thought about. Anything else coming up? Plug away. Whatever you got coming up. At NFL.com or whatever.
Yeah. So that piece, check it out. I don't see what you guys think. I mean, like, it's like the best case. I had AJ Halsey as my second rounder. Kind of like what would be sort of the best reasonable case for every team's first 2 picks. So, damn Denver Broncos and Buffalo Bills made me go way into round 4 and, do the second round or second pick there. But top 100, revised top 100 is coming out soon. Something, and then final mock right after that. So then we're kind of into the home stretch a little bit.
How tough are those mocks to do? To be honest with you,
how tough are the mocks? You said,
yeah, to do those mocks with everyone. You kind of just guessing and see what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I do 3, and I know it's a small number. Like when I was at Yahoo, I do one, just Tuesday, right? But they're like, all right, 3's all we need. I go, that's fine with me. But this year has been tricky for sure, and it's funny, like. There are certain teams that I'm like, man, that's a landmine. I could see that, like Saints at 8 could. Yeah. No one's really talking about what they might do. Everyone just assumes the Ravens are going Venga. Yeah. But so, there's a few spots that I haven't quite figured out yet. And every time I do it, I just kind of drive over it as fast as I can and hope I don't hit a landmine, so.
Well, you do great work. Like I said, I love having you on. You're my favorite guest every year.
I appreciate that.
Staple of the barroom, staple of the draft on tap show. So again, thank you so much, Eric, for taking time out of your evening. We appreciate it, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing your articles that you post up here at NFL.com. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the Bears do pick a couple of Missouri players, and we can bring it back on after the draft and talk about them.
I'd be happy to do it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, see you, fellas.
Thank you. That's awesome, man. Eric at home is one of the more, tuned in, plugged in, if you will, writers. I respect the heck of the work he does. He puts in effort, puts in time. And I've seen him at the Senior Bowl. He's always, working his sources, always trying to, come up with stories and all that stuff. So, I love, he's one of by hands down, one of the best guests we had here over the years at Draft on Tap, and just awesome. Very, very knowledgeable. Yep. Cliff. Exactly. He's very, very knowledgeable. So, but that was Eric. And we were talking about his mock draft. Obviously he had, he mentioned Zion Young, defensive end, going to the Bears at 25. Today, we're going to do something that we're talking about a position that I know everyone wants to talk about. I know I've been deemed the safety hater. I'm not a safety hater. I do like safeties. Just let's put it out there. It's just that for me, the front seven, it's got a lot of holes in it, and if you don't have a front seven, then get after the quarterback. Like I said earlier when I was talking to Eric, I don't care if you have Ronnie Lott and Ed Reed in their prime back there, it doesn't make a
Yeah.
difference, right? You got to put pressure on the quarterback, got to make that quarterback move, and then you can bring those playmakers into the secondary. But with the turnover in terms of what the Bears have happened, the secondary this offseason, obviously, Kevin Byard no longer a Bear. He's now off with the Patriots in New England. They bring in Kobe Bryant, his replacement. Jaquan Brisker is with the Steelers now. So one half, both safeties, I should say, are going to be new, right? So, and then going into this draft class, with it being such a unpredictable draft, I could see where, they have two kids, and we'll get into them in depth here. I'll get into them in depth here real quick. But there's two guys at the top of the safety board that I could see going in any draft, top 15 in any draft, right? Because that's how talented a player they are. You talk about just physical traits and ability on the football field. We talk about smart. We talk about leadership. We talk about production on the football. We talk about tackling ability and all that stuff. So the top two guys. I don't AC, if you want to jump right in, yep, there you go. That's those are my top five right there. And again, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, obviously started off his career at Alabama with Nick Saban. Started as a freshman for Alabama, then ended up transferring to Ohio State. And he's a guy that for me is right up there in terms of some of the better safety prospects I've seen come out. Now, does he have the measurables that everyone wants? The height, length, and all that stuff. He doesn't really quite fit that. I don't think he ran a 40. Actually, Ohio State's at the 25th. I don't think I've seen his times there. I don't think he actually ran a 40. So we don't have times there because he's recovering from an injury. So, but talk about instincts. Talk about a leader. Talk about someone that's going to be, getting your team in terms of your defense. Getting them in line, lined up, and all that stuff. Caleb Downs has that. And then the other guy is Dylan Thieneman. So people who are familiar with Big Ten and Thieneman, he's a guy who started his career off at Purdue actually. Played there for the Boilermakers and then ended up transferring to Oregon last year. He was a freshman, a Big Ten freshman of the year. Led all the Big Ten defense backs in 2024 with 104 tackles. So he was a tackling machine with the Boilermakers at 106 and 104 in back-to-back years. Goes last year to Oregon, had 96 tackles, 2 interceptions, five passes defense. But his freshman year, he was off the charts. 106 tackles, 6 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. And then he goes to the combine, and what he does there athletically in terms of measurables, 6 feet, 201, ran a 4.35 40 with a 1.52 10-yard split. Very impressive. 41-inch vertical, 18 reps on the bench, a 10'5" broad jump. That shows some of the athleticism and ability for him to go and make plays. And he's an explosive playmaker from the defensive secondary. And I think those two guys for me, again, I keep saying this, but any draft, I think these two guys are top 15 picks, not just this draft. I think any draft. That's how much I think these guys are good in terms of what they do. So if one of these guys fell to the Bears at 25, I could totally see the Bears jumping everybody and going and making that selection. Caleb Downs, technically you would not, theoretically you would say, he's no way he's making it to the Bears at 25. Kind of touch on it with Eric. There are some reports. Again, nothing's confirmed because these are medical stuff, but some reports, true or not true, we don't know. But in terms of questioning his ACL and in terms of longevity and all that stuff. So, if that actually happens and if that's actually true, then you could see him kind of drop down the board there. But I'm not anticipating it, so that's why I don't think he's actual reality in terms of picking for the Bears. But Dylan Thieneman could be there, and again, this is a guy for me. I think if you have some of the clips put up there, AC, we can go and run them. But talk about athleticism, a guy that can make plays from sideline to sideline. He's a run filler. Doesn't back down from coming contact and all that stuff. So, and again, just the ability to range from one sideline to the other sideline. You can line him up as a two safety kind of cover 2 look. You can play him as a single high safety. He's got that kind of speed and range and all that stuff. He's got ball production, right? He's got 9 interceptions in his career. 8 interceptions in his career, 14 passes defensed. Excuse me, I'm battling a little bit of a cough there. I don't know if you guys can hear it, so I'm gonna have to cough here a couple times. But yeah, and I could see when I put his tape on, I can envision Dennis Allen, putting this guy's tape on and saying, I can make this guy a playmaker. You can line him up with Kyler Gordon and and Kobe Bryant, and I can have guys coming from all over the field in terms of bringing pressure as a blitzer, dropping back in coverage, disguising stuff. So I think that's what would excite someone like a Dennis Allen. I think that's what something where if he has conviction, say, "Hey, go get this guy." For me, he's a plug and play player. Day one, line him up next to Kobe Bryant, and I think you have your safety pairings for the next 5 to 10 years. So that's why he's number 2. And again, I'm very, very high on Dillon Thieneman. And my third guy, and Eric and I touched on it, is a guy that's really kind of come up, out of nowhere, if you will, and is a lot of people like him in the first round. He's a good player, and this is Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo. First of all, he's got the size at 6'3.5", 201, 32.25-inch arm length. He's got the measurables. It ran a 4.52 40, which is obviously not as fast as some of the other guys, but still pretty fast enough with the 1.58 10-yard split, 35.5-inch vertical. So he's got the lower body explosiveness, and he's a guy that's made plays on the football as well. 5 career interceptions, 13 pass defense, but 9 forced fumbles. And I think this is something that obviously a team that craves turnovers, creating havoc. I think that's where McNeil-Warren kind of jumps in there. But for me, he's not a first rounder, right? And so I think he's more of a day 2 guy, second round pick. And we touch on a little bit with Eric, but some of the instinct stuff is not there. Slight build, even though he's 6'3", he's 201. You see he has a slight frame. He did miss a significant part of 2024 with a shoulder injury, right? So missed the final 5 games of the season. So, things like that kind of concern me with his build. But the playmaking ability is there. The traits are there, physical traits. And I think he's a guy, if you get him, if you bypass that in the first round, get him in the second round, I think that's going to be a solid pickup there as well. So, but I don't like him as much as I like Downs and Thieneman, right? So he was number 3 on my list, and I know I might be a minority on that. I know a lot of people like him in the first round. I just don't see it, right? And I think Eric and I both agree there. He's more of a second day 2 pick. So my fourth guy is a guy that we're going to go ahead and touch on here, and that's Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina. He's a guy that one of these, and we're going to seeing a lot of these in the safety class. A lot of these hybrid guys, right? Guys that are safeties. Bodies like Kilgore here, 6'1", 210 with 32 7/8 arm length, but he plays at a nickel position. They had him line up in the slot.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw him listed as corner on some of the mock draft sites.
He played nickel for South Carolina a lot of times, and you see a lot of these clips here where he's covering the guys in the slot. He's running down the field, staying in phase with receivers. Is in tight end, so on and so forth. So gives you some of that flexibility in terms of, hey, we're going up against, a big tight end here, a guy who's a playmaker. We can put our safety on him and he can cover him. So that's the positive, that's the stuff that he can give you. 21 passes defensed, so that tells you, he gets his hands on the football, 8 interceptions. Again, another ball hog, so he started games at both safety and nickel through his, collegiate career. So coming out of high school, out of Georgia, he was actually a 2-way player, played safety and wide receiver. So, he's been a 3-year starter here for the Gamecocks. Was also a team captain, led the SEC in 2024 with 5 interceptions. So again, ball production is there. Not only the physical traits and the speed, but also be able to run with the receiver down the field. Talk about speed, ran a 4.4 40 at the combine with a 1.5, a 10-yard split, a 37-inch vertical, a 10-foot 10-inch broad jump. I bring you things up because while they're impressive athletic feats, that also, for me, highlights the explosiveness that he has.
Right.
And that's what you want. You want some of these guys to be explosive. And I think this is one, and there's a couple of one more we'll cover, throughout this process here. But one of those hybrid guys that can line up as a nickel corner or / safety. And again, I'm thinking Dennis Allen, right? How he could take these players and put them in certain disguise and coverages and be able to provide pressure and utilize them in multiple different ways. So I think that's, a player like this, a player like Thieneman, Downs combined with a Kobe Bryant. And I think that's, obviously Kyler Gordon and some of the other players they have currently on the roster. I think this is where, you could kind of see where Dennis Allen gets into it, that mad scientist had and kind of generates pressure, similar to what we saw in that playoff game versus the Rams. A lot of that pressure, he kind of generated from his secondary players, right? So I think this is something that, a player like this, a chess piece like this, could be something that he could kind of want and look for, right? But Kilgore for me is a day 2 guy, not a first round guy. The only guys I can see in the first round are either Caleb Downs if he drops by some miracle, or Dylan Thieneman. And the way it sounds, as you know, you guys heard Eric here earlier, he doesn't see Thieneman dropping past the Vikings at 18. Might even go. He had him. I think you mentioned the Bengals at 10. So we'll see where that happens. But again, these are more day 2 guys. So, and then finally my last guy, and I think it's funny because Eric, we didn't meet, we didn't have a sort of
yeah.
But we were on the same wavelength page wise with a lot of these prospects. And a guy I think he just mentioned that he kind of mocked the Bears on day 2 is AJ Halsey, LSU. And this is a guy that I really, really like. This guy played at New Mexico. He played at Houston and then transferred this past year to LSU. But he's a 4-year starter between those 3 different schools. He's made 44 career starts. He started as a freshman in New Mexico. Again, this is a guy that it was his lone season at Baton Rouge, but really was a playmaker. 3 interceptions, 4 pass defense, one forced fumble. Again, LSU didn't have a great year this past year, but when you put on the tape of that defense, this kid's making plays. Now, is he the perfect fit like some of the other guys in terms of athletic ability? No, in terms of traits, 6 feet, 215. So he's a little bit of a more of a thicker bodied safety, more of a traditional safety. He's more of a downhill thumper, right? If you think old school safeties, guys that come down and knock some helmets, this is where Halsey comes in at, right? So 215, 37-inch arm length, so that the length is not there. I said ball production has been there. He's got 10 interceptions for his career, and that's all things and timing, being able to kind of read and key and diagnose what the quarterback's doing, and then here jumping those routes and getting here after that receiver, and jumping anything in front of him and making a play on a football. So that's what it gives you, plus that added physicality that I love to see in my safety. So fearless, coming downhill, will fill with authority in terms of as a run defender. As a guy that also was, if you watch the tape, he's always pointing out plays. He's telling his, lining up his guys in the backfield. So he's that leader guy. And again, we're seeing these clips here, and he's just knocking guys silly here, right? And he has no care for his body or anything like that. He just wants to make a play on the football, and I think he would be an instant fan favorite coming into Chicago. So he's number 5 for me. AJ Halsey on the list here with LSU. So those are my top 5. But like I said earlier, this is a deep class in safety, and you can get a guy 3rd round, possibly even 4th round that can come here and might not be a starter day 1, or might he'll compete for a position. So a guy that we didn't touch on here, but I've been a huge fan of this guy going back to when I saw him down in Mobile. And again, that's why Senior Bowl week is so important for some of these guys. And that's Bud Clark, TCU. It's another one of these hybrid guys, 6'1". 180 pounds, 31.5-inch arm length, 9-inch hand size, a 6th-year senior. So I think these are some of the things that they're gonna drop Bud Clark in the draft process, right? He's missed 12 games due to injuries. All right, he's a 6th-year senior, 26 years old currently, will be 27 by the time the season starts. So I think those are some reasons why his name hasn't really caught fire in terms of some of these first-round mock drafts. But in terms of talent, in terms of ball hawking ability, this is a guy you can go ahead and get probably in that 2nd round, maybe even 3rd round range. If you get Bud Clark with that, was that 3rd round pick? Is it pick 89? I think overall. Yeah. That in a 3rd round, line up your offense and defensive players. Up with the first couple picks. We talked about defensive tackle or edge guy or even off ball linebackers. And we haven't even touched on. We touched on center in our previous show, but that could be a position that's more of a day 3 as well. Position. I think that's really going to target that, but they're going to draft the receiver, guys, and they might draft the receiver earlier than any one of us initially anticipated. But I'm telling you, Ben Johnson wants a dynamic speed guy on offense at receiver, and I think they're going to get him. Whether it might not come in the 1st round, but 2nd round, don't be surprised if there's a guy there. And we'll get into these playmakers in our future upcoming shows. What I'm going to call the show is dynamic playmakers, right? So they might not be the big names like the Jordan Tysons or the Micaiah Lemons, but these are guys that you can find day 2, day 3, possibly day 4, that can give you that element of dynamic playmaking ability in that receiver room, even in the running back room. So we'll cover those guys later on. But So that this is where I'm trying to say I kind of veered off course here, but you can get safeties that can come in and compete, possibly even start for you, early into day 3 in this draft.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to say the more I saw Hossey, the more I loved what I was seeing out of him. Like you said, big hitter, not scared to stick his nose in there, thicker safety, and gets his hands on balls. I mean, that picture that I put up of your top 5 safeties, it shows him literally cutting in front of a Texas A&M wide receiver, going up and high pointing the football, which you love to see from the safety position as well. And then Kilgore, because I'm a Kentucky fan, his brother actually plays for South Carolina as well and had a pick 6 in that game. So when you put up Kilgore, I was like, man, this is the guy who torched us. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, wait, that was his brother. But, I mean, Kilgore didn't have a bad game against my Kentucky Wildcats, but I like the way he plays as well. I love Thieneman, and it scares me because so many mock draft. I know you don't do mock drafts, but I'm a mock draft addict. Mock draft Mondays, I'm looking them up. I'm seeing who's falling, who's going where in people's mocks, and Thieneman's been going to Minnesota, and I'm like, man, can we just not have him in the division? If we can't have him, I don't want to face him twice a year,
It makes like a logical sense for them to take him there because obviously Harrison Smith is retiring, right? So I think that's a kind of plug and play player there. You can. I think that's why a lot of these mocks have him going. But as we touched on with Eric, this is a draft where you throw away all the mocks, throw away all the things you've been reading and saying. Other than Mendoza going number 1, I have no idea who anyone's going, right? Number 2, I think the Jets are going to go in pass rusher, whether it's Reese, Ohio State. I think it's going to be David Bailey from Texas Tech personally, but we'll see what happens there. I think the Cardinals are going to go with right tackle Moaga from Miami. That's my opinion. Yeah. Other than that, man, it's a free for all, right? And we'll see what happens. But because everyone's draft board is going to be different. Team A is going to have this player rated much more higher than Team B does, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a very entertaining and interesting night for day 1, most likely. And I think throughout the process, right? I think guys that some might think might be a party free agent, might go in the 5th round. And it's just that type of draft this year. But the one thing I am encouraged about, some of the class or the position groups that are kind of deep in talent, fall in line with the Bears' needs, and I think that's going to be a nice setup for the Bears to go ahead and fill some of those needs that they have right now. And then, as Eric mentioned as well, there's another wave of free agency, so we'll see what happens at their draft. We see what teams cut players that they've just drafted someone high at that position, and who's available now in the 3rd and 4th, 5th wave of veteran free agency. And then you round your team. So I know a lot of people are a little, I don't know if upset or mad is the right word right now, but in terms of what the Bears have done activity wise or lack thereof, I know, for example, me, like I know that they're ready, they're sitting there ready to pounce, whether it's on a big name or just another guy that gets let go by a team. I just feel like they know that they need some help up front, defensive tackle and maybe end. Again, I'm a huge Austin Booker believer. I think he's a guy that's going to come in. I think he's going to kind of continue to get better. Shamar Turner was playing defensive end. Remember, guys, last year before he got hurt. So, I mean, he's another guy you kind of throw him in at that end position. So that's why in that 2nd round where a guy like, I've talked about McClellan from Missouri could be an option there, maybe even the 3rd round. So we'll see there. But, safety they're going to address, I believe, early on in the draft. And I think also that they're going to hit the front 7 as well. So we haven't even touched off-ball linebacker, which I know they signed, obviously, Bush and they re-signed DeMarco Jackson, but I still think that's a position they
brought back Sanborn too, baby.
Brought back Jack Sanborn as well. So I think, but that's still a position that they could attack, possibly day 3. And again, another position where, there are players that you can get day 3 where they can come in and contribute for you, as rookies. So. Very excited the way that this draft has lined up for the Bears. So we'll just see what they end up doing here. But safety, we know where they're going to draft one, whether it's the 1st round or 2nd round. But they definitely get one. And for me, these 5 guys, 6 with Bart Clark, and then I can keep going. Man. I can go. Treydon Stukes from Arizona is a guy that's a guy that's 6'1", 190, another one of these tweeners, guy that can cover your slot, a nickel. And drop back. Another explosive athlete, 4'3", 340, 150, a 10-yard split, 48-inch vertical, 10'10" broad jump. This is a guy, a track and field guy. Talk about ball production. This kid had, what was it, 7 interceptions in his first career, 29 pass defense. So he's always on the football. And his ability to kind of turn and backpedal and open up his gate and turn and run with the receiver and stay in phase downfield, looks like a cornerback, right? And so he's a guy. But again, he's had some injury stuff towards ACL back in his right knee back in October. So October of 2024. So last year was a year recovering from that. So he's had some injury stuff. Again, another slightly built frame, 190 pounds. So, but again, another chess piece guy you can put there, and you can give Dennis Allen the ability to kind of disguise coverages, send him on a blitz with that blazing speed. He's an aggressive blitzer as well. These are just some of the names that I can just rattle off for you here.
Yeah, I was going to bring up a couple of the names, and we've got some guys in the chat that have thrown in some questions that we'll throw in at the end. But Kamari Ramsey, I've been seeing him quite a bit out of USC. 6 foot, 202. Pretty good ball production, couple interceptions, 11 pass defenses. What are your thoughts on Ramsey out of USC?
Yeah, I was watching his tape today, and he's another guy that for me, a 4-star recruit out of California, spent his first 2 seasons at UCLA, and was actually a starter for the Bruins there as a freshman. Overall, and then transferred to USC the last 2 years, and overall he's been a 3-year starter, 31 career starts. He's a guy you mentioned, 6 feet, 202. The arm length, the length is an issue for me, and I'll get into it there more. But another explosive, lower body, in terms of athletic ability, 4.47 40, 1.57 10-yard split, 36-inch vertical, 10-foot 10 broad jump, quick and explosive transition, closing speed to fly to make a tackle, effective blitzing off the edge. Again, utilizing his ability to as a speed guy to get off there at the burst. Once he sees it in front of him, in terms of if he's playing back their zone, he sees a crossing route come in front of him, he's quick to just transition, jump, and attack that receiver. Wraps up the ankles, but in terms of as a tackler, and brings the ball carrier down. Some things that for me concern me with him. And again, he's probably going to be a day 3 guy, right?
Right.
But shorter arms, right? We see him falling off a lot of would-be tacklers. 30, less sub 30 on 1-inch arms. So I think that's one of the reasons why he just kind of doesn't able to wrap up and secure. If he doesn't get a good base sense of kind of balance in terms of attacking the ankles and wrapping up. As I mentioned earlier, he comes up if he's not balanced, he can fall off that would-be tackle. Can be a tick late to locate and diagnose up near line of scrimmage, right? So what that means is, if he's up there in the box, I don't know if it's because of his height or whatnot, but he's only 6 feet tall. But there's just a tad bit late in terms of identifying, in terms of play action or RPOs. Who's got the ball? Is it the back? Is it the quarterback? And that could throw off his timing a little bit and make him a little bit late. And for me, the ball production hasn't been great, right? 4-year player, I said 3-year starter, only 2 career interceptions, only 11 passes defensed. I wanted to see a little bit more ball production from him. I think he's capable of a little bit more ball production. But in terms of the athletic ability, in terms of a guy you can bring in and coach up, right? And maybe I might play the first couple of years as a special teamer and just be a backup safety. I think that's where I see Kamari Ramsey coming in here from USC, and then moving on, potentially being a starter. But initially, I just see him as a backup right now, a guy that could play special teams as well. The other guy from USC, since we're talking about USC, is his teammate, Bishop Fitzgerald. Not as tall, only 5'11", 201, but he's more of a little bit more thicker in terms of body weight, but not as explosive in the lower body. Only 4.55 40-yard dash, so his speed is not the greatest. Doesn't match Kamari's. 1.58 10-yard split. Had a 34-inch vertical, 6.993 cone, which is not bad. Started his career at Coffeyville Community College. Ended up going to NC State for 2 seasons. Started there. And then transferred last year to USC, where he was, after the season, he was named the consensus All-American, right? 5 interceptions, 3 pass defense, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. Earned him a consensus All-American from this past season with the Trojans. So for me, his positives: complete build, quick feet with good closing speed, keys and diagnosis, jumps, routes. This is a guy really, in terms of having those instincts as a safety, being able to see it and feel it and jump it. That's what Bishop Fitzgerald gives you. Can lure a quarterback into some of those throws where he can pick it off or get his hands on it. So I love the way he kind of plays the game with the quarterback there. Again, talk about ball hawk, great hands. jumps. Another one jumps anything that crosses in a zone. So I like that about him, right? Some of the stuff some of the negatives I have here for below average size and length, foot speed again is not elite. Well, so what does that mean? He's a guy that might not be a single high safety. He's a guy that's probably if you're in a cover 2 shell kind of defense, I think he could be one half of the safety. So does that limit in terms of how Dennis Allen can see and utilize him moving forward? Mm-hmm. Those are some of the things that I kind of put down as maybe things that kind of drop to stock in my opinion. Take some head scratching angles on run plays to the ball carrier, just like where are you going? It's just a flat line to the sideline where you can see that the runner already has an angle on him and he's got no way of getting there. So, but those are things that you could over time kind of coach up, right, and help him get better at. But that foot speed to me is something that being maybe a cover 2 safety, a half field safety, would Dennis Allen kind of want that? Would he want someone faster, right? Because that's what they're talking about. Talking about getting younger and faster on defense. 4.55 is nothing to cough at. I'm not saying he's running molasses out there, but it's just as opposed to some of the other guys that are running 4.3s and 4.4s. I think and it shows up that he's not the fleet as a foot, right? So that's why taking those angles are really are key for someone like Bishop Fitzgerald, because you don't have the speed to make up for your mistake. So you got to be able to take that better angle to catch up on the run player. So, but again, you can coach that up. I think, but his ball hawking skill, his ability to kind of key it, diagnose it, jump it, that is just God-given natural talent ability. So I think this is a kid, day 3, 4th, 5th round, maybe you bring him in and develop some of his weaknesses, because what he can do is you want that. You want that ball hawking ability. You want the guy who can key and diagnose and jump anything in front of him. So, that's something that really kind of caught my eye there as well. So another guy I'll just, since we're kind of rattling off here some safeties, another guy last guy I'll talk about here is Robert Spears Jennings, Oklahoma. Another big body, tall safety, explosive safety, 6'2", 204, 32.5-inch arm length, 10 3/8-inch hand size, huge hands. Ran a 4.32 40, 35-inch vertical, 1.51 10-yard split, had a 10.5-foot broad jump. All right. This is a guy that was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school, played safety and receiver, also ran track in high school. A 2-year starter for the Sooners. He's got 25 starts under his belt. But obviously the thing that jumps out at me is that size and that length with the combination of that speed. Again, ball production isn't the greatest, right? So, but his positives, obviously the size is there, explosive quickness and speed to close in on the target, effective pressuring the quarterback as a delayed blitzer with speed and size. So, again,
sound likes that.
Exactly. Have him lined up there, and next thing you know, because of that 4.3 speed, because of the ability to close in with that burst, he's a guy I think I can see Dennis Allen like, man, I like this kid. Played, 5 forced fumbles the last 2 seasons. So, ripping the ball out, getting that ball loose is something that he's kind of been, getting better at the last 2 years there at Oklahoma. Size, speed, and length. I think this is a guy that can match up with tight ends in the slot. But is he a day 1 starter? Probably not. Some of the things that I think needs to be coached up at are his back pedal, very upright, choppy back pedal. Does not explode into a transition, meaning that once something crosses in front of him, if he's backpedaling, the explosive downhill attack is not as quick as I want to see, especially because of the numbers he put up, the athletic ability he shows. Some of these testing numbers, I anticipate a little bit better. To some extent, I'm like, is he just kind of like not even going 100% at times, right? But is a guy that can be placed in conflict easy as a safety. And what that means is he can be kind of lured in by the quarterback's eyes into a position where he's not sure where to go, whether he's jumping the route in front of him or he's going for the guy that's kind of running that big route behind him. So, he sees some indecision there. And obviously with the NFL, that slight indecision could be, a 50-yard touchdown the other way. So, those are things but those things you can coach up, right? You can bring them in, you can, give them to your safeties coach, but they could work with that type of size, that length, and that explosive lower body, and make him a better overall player. But again, more of a day 3 guy for me, in my opinion. But a guy you can kind of bring in and make him a backup and a special teamer initially, and then hopefully coach him up, and then one day could be possibly a contributor on defense. So those are just some of the names that I've gone through here in terms of the safety position. There's probably a ton more that I could go through, but it's we're already over our limit, so I'll cut it short there.
Well, I mean, we already talked about Jalen Catalon with Eric Edholm, who's a Missouri guy, so we got to see him up close and personal. 7-year senior, so that's a huge asterisk by him that may make him completely undraftable. But he's lost a step in the last couple of years. And another guy, I don't have much on him, but I made a banner for him because I heard. I can't remember. I believe it was Tom Thayer on ESPN 1000. He didn't mention him by name, but he said the kid out of Penn State. And I'm not sure if it's pronounced Zaki or Zaki
Wheatley. Yeah. 6'3", 203, 31-inch arm length, 9.5-inch hand size. Guys, I mean, as pro day, run a 4.65 40. So again, that speed is not there. 1.64 10-yard split, 33-inch vertical. And I didn't go and compare him to this other player, but I watch him. I'm thinking Jaquan Brisker all over again. Not just because he went to Penn State. But just the instincts for me were lacking there, right? In terms of his positives, good size, height, pre-snap diagnosing are solid, seasoned and identifies crossers and raw combination, can play the deepest of the deep safety. And that's the thing that they had to do at Penn State was he was more that deep safety. Like if it's over your head, that's a touchdown, basic kind of thing, right? So he was never really, down. There are occasions where he came down in the box, but if you took a look at his numbers, only one interception in his career, so ball production wasn't there. Just 6 pass defense. Again, a lot of that was, I think, some of that I should say was part of the way that he was utilized. Again, deep safety. A lot of that, keep everything in front of you, make sure nothing gets over your head. So but that size and that speed, I think. I'm sorry, not the size. The speed, I think, is something that we talked about. Allen wants some of those dynamic, explosive players, athletes in that safety position. And Wheatley, he'll be drafted, but he's more of a guy that for me would be a career backup. Maybe has a chance to start eventually, but for me, it's just a career backup, a guy that can come in and be a long-term player, but just not someone that I could see fulfilling what the Bears have kind of laid out for us in terms of their footprint in terms of what they want at safety. They want fast, dynamic playmakers, right? And with only one career interception, 4.65 40, I just don't see him fitting in that. Now, if you're a cover 2 team, a predominant cover 2 team, and you want him to be a backup and come in when your starter gets hurt, definitely can be that. And obviously, it's got to make a living off of special teams. But in terms of coming in being a starter for the Bears, I just didn't see it.
Yeah. I heard Thayer bring him up. I didn't know if he had heard something in back channels that I'm not privy to. I thought we may bring him up, but I mean, if it sounds like he's not a fit for what we're trying to do, then that makes sense. That's
in my opinion, right? So when I watch them go and draft him, but I'm just saying, for me, when I watch his tape, it's again, I just don't see the explosive ability. I just don't see the ball skills, the ball production there. So. Only 2 forced fumbles in his career. He's a 5th-year redshirt senior as well. So he's got plenty of time to play 28 career starts. Went to Penn State as a cornerback, and then they moved to safety. So, for me, he's a guy that will get drafted. I didn't see him as an ideal fit.
Yeah. Well, if you want, I can get through these starred questions that I asked the chat for earlier, and then we can close this thing out. And I know we stayed a little long, but we had a guest today, so I guess that was part of it. The first one from Cliff Victoria says, how soon will the Bears address the center position? Will it be the second round, or will they wait until later? We covered the center last time we were on, I mean, we saw a lot of guys go to Hecht's Pro Day. Maybe that was a zigzag, making people look over here when they're going over here. Because I mean, last year we didn't hear anything about Colston Loveland, who they bring in, first round. I don't know if it's something. Do you think they'll wait until later, or do you think they'll grab a guy earlier?
Not to pat myself on the back, but you didn't hear anything about Colston Loveland except for here at the bar room and Draft on Tap, because I kept saying that Colston Loveland was the ideal fit for the Bears in this system. But again, I digress. So we'll move on from that.
I liked him better. KB is a big Michigan guy. So on the Barfly Tailgate show, we were talking about Colston as well. But I'm saying, like, the reports, people report so-and-so's at the pro day. I don't remember hearing it.
Yeah, and like I said, don't pay attention to that. I mean, general managers and who attends, who doesn't attend a pro day, there's a number of different scenarios, reasons for that. Just because Ryan Poles was at a pro day doesn't mean he's necessarily interested in that player. It doesn't mean he's not interested in a player that he's not at a pro day as well. So he was at the Alabama pro day. When Ty Simpson was throwing, obviously he's not interested in the quarterback, but obviously he could be interested in Caden Proctor or some of the other athletes that Alabama has as well. So, it's a lot of cat and mouse right now, and especially now once we get into like the last 2-3 weeks before the draft, you're gonna see a lot of crazy stuff coming out, reports and all that stuff, because everybody now is trying to seek and figure out, all right, who is this guy listening to? And a lot of them, the GMs itself, they do a lot of consensus building right now. All right, this so and so from this 4-letter network has his mock draft out, and he's got these 32 players in there. This guy from CBS has this mock draft out. So they want to see if there's a consensus now in terms of, all right, these are guys everyone agrees that are the first round guys. And it moves on from there. So a lot of these teams now have AI generated programs where they kind of run a lot of these simulations and all that stuff. So it's going to be insane, right? The next couple of weeks here moving forward. But yeah, for me, center, to answer your question, Cliff, center, they went and got a Bradbury, so I think that's going to be a guy that's obviously going to fill in for next year. I heard they're bringing in Brockermeyer, who's Blake Brockermeyer's son, former ex-Bear tackle who plays center at Miami. He wasn't invited at the combine. I was actually doing his tape this afternoon, and then I saw the news where he's coming in. 6'3", 298, 32-inch arms. Not the greatest athlete. So if you look at the numbers, you think, he's not an ideal fit, but a lot of times they bring these guys in to kind of get a feel for them and so on and so forth. So whether they're going to draft them or just maybe could be a priority free agent, so on and so forth. But I think, with picks, the 2 picks in the second round, if you want a guy like Hecht, or a guy I like a lot is the kid from Iowa, and I'm trying to blank on his name, Logan Jones. Yeah, I think they'll be available there. Possibly Jones, I should say, would be available there in the third round, pick 89. If you want to roll a dice and see if Jake Slaughter is there in the fourth round, that could be an option there as well. What I'm trying to say is I don't think they're going to go center obviously with the first round. I don't think they'll go center with the second round pick. They just have too many more needs that are just we talked about it again. Defensive line. I keep saying edge, but we don't know. Defensive line, safety. I think receiver is higher on this team's needs than a lot of us believe, and so don't be shocked if that's a pick again that's going to be one of those, just like Luther Burden last year, where I'm like, oh, Luther Burden, receiver, why? I'm telling you, Ben Johnson has a plan. He's got a vision for his offense, and with DJ Moore gone, Khalif Raymond brought in here as a special teamer / possibly a third receiver. He's going to want to add that dynamic option in the receiving room. And I think those are some positions to look at. We haven't touched on off-ball linebacker. We will touch on that, moving on in other shows, but that's another neat position there as well. I know Greg Gabriel touched on in terms of, they could double dip at safety. They could go for a guy in the early rounds and take a flyer on some of these guys in day 3. So to answer your question, Cliff, I think third round pick 89 is kind of where you kind of start maybe figuring out where they can target a center. If not third round, then fourth round for sure. So late day 2, early day 3 is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, Lucy says Danny puts in the work. It should be on ESPN. If he goes to ESPN, then I'm not going to be able to spend Mondays with my guy over here. He's going to be. Tyler Vineyard off X says Halsey is one of my favorite players in the draft, but probably better in zone coverage, although not exactly scheme dependent. Fair assessment. Stooks looks like a free safety more than a strong safety. I know DA likes his safeties to be similar traits, but is Stooks too redundant with Bryant at the other safety position?
Tyler, I get your question, but what they've said is they want their safeties to be interchangeable, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons why Brisker and to a certain extent, didn't work well with Byard because they weren't, interchangeable. Obviously, Byard was more of that cagey veteran, the guy that can key and diagnose and jump routes and make plays on the ball. Brisker wasn't that guy. Brisker was better, as we saw in that last game against the Rams, near at the line of scrimmage as a blitzer, as a guy that can help enforce maybe some of that run defense. So I think what they're looking for with this guy like Kobe Bryant now brought in, a guy that can do, come downhill, be aggressive as a box safety if you need him, but also be that guy that can play some single high safety, be a guy that can go track the ball and take the ball away. And so that's what they're hoping. That's why they invested in Kobe Bryant. I think if you pair him up with another one similar to a Stooks, right, where he's also a guy that can come down and cover in your nickel, like cover a tight end or nickel receiver, but also is very, very aggressive in terms of coming down and being an aggressive. Now, the unfortunate thing is he's sub 200 pounds. So can his body, can his frame take that type of play making ability at the next level? Will he be hurt all the time? That's one thing you're gonna have to kind of take a look, talk with your doctors, and kind of do all the projections and all that stuff, and how much muscle can be out on him without him losing any speed, any sort of the explosiveness. Those are all these conversations that you have right now during the draft process. So, but in terms of a guy that can make plays on the ball, in terms of that guy who's aggressive, plays with that aggressive demeanor, Stooks fills that criteria just like Kobe Bryant. And I think they want those safeties to be interchangeable. They're actually more of the NFL now is kind of moving away from that old school, the way we grew up in terms of there's a strong safety that's good against the run that will knock your socks off, and there's a free safety that will drop back and help in coverage. That's gone. They want these guys to be interchangeable so they can do what DA did in the playoff game, is just hide coverages, disguise stuff, not let the offense know who's coming and where they're coming from. So I think that's why guys like Stooks, Jalen Gilcor, a guy like Thieneman, I honestly do believe, I think Thieneman, if he's there, I think the Bears are taking him.
Oh, yeah, I think so
too.
Like
just watching him play on tape, I can just see DA coming up with all different kinds of, creative ways that he could utilize that kid's speed, his aggressiveness, the playmaking ability. And in Halsey, I just love the way his physicality. He's a throwback to some of that old school stuff, right? But also a guy who's quick in terms of diagnosing plays, knowing stuff, So, that's why I like him a lot, AJ Halsey. So, will he be someone that DA will love, fall in love with? I don't know. But for me, someone I could definitely see making some plays in the backfield, and I think definitely seeing Chicago fans falling in love with some of those hard hits he's going to be laying out there on the lakefront.
Yeah, if the Bears were to pick Stooks or Halsey, I'd be fine with either of them. And like you said, Thieneman, if there's any shot that he falls down there.
And Bud Clark is a guy I love too, guys. I love Bud Clark. You get him in that third round, pick 89. You talk about a guy, sixth-year senior, has some injury concerns, but this kid is talk about in coverage. Now, run defense, he's slight. He's 188. Again, talking about some of those, projections with your medical staff. How much weight can we add on this kid? How much stronger can we get him without losing some of that playmaking ability? But again, 6'1", where are his numbers? I think he's 6'1", 6'2", I believe he is. 188. 31.5 inch arms, 38-inch vertical, 4'4", 140, 156. Those are the explosive traits you look for in that lower half, lower body. Ball production galore. 15 interceptions in his career, 21 pass defense. So and then down
2 pick sixes too.
Yeah, it's on the Senior Bowl. He was locking up guys. He was locking up receivers on the Senior Bowl, right? So that's why a lot of people had him like a corner. Some had him at safety. So even TCU played him at both positions. At different stages. So. But I get a guy like that in the third round. I think that's a guy that can come in. And again, we're talking about guys that can be interchangeable, right? So I think Bud Clark, I know the age is going to be something that's why I think he's going in probably, late day 2. He's going to be, because I mentioned, he's going to be 27 by the time the season starts. So that some teams might be like, that scares some teams off. He's missed 12 games because of injury. Again, that's where the medicals come in, doctors come in, projecting moving forward how he's going to play at the next level. If you're missing 12 games because he's getting injured in college, what are you going to do in terms of NFL where they're bigger, faster, and stronger and coming at you, right? So that's something that the medical teams have to talk about. But, a lot of intriguing players, but the two for me that are ideal fits are obviously Caleb Downs, who I anticipate will be long gone, and Dylan Thieneman, who I think might be gone as well.
Yeah, I agree. Howie R. Bears, he says, I'm here. I made it what I missed. You missed mostly the whole show. So you can always go back and listen on demand. I know I saw someone else bring up Jalen Kilgore. We did talk about him. We showed tape on him. So if you go back after you finish and listen back, you'll hear all of Danny's thoughts and hear his scouting report on him and everything. This next guy, Jason9718, says, I like Malachi Lawrence. How high do you see him going? He says, I think he's going round 1. I got to be honest, I didn't know a ton about Malachi Lawrence, but I did have a guy in the chat. I can't remember if it was here or Barfly Tailgate. I believe it was Cornelius who brought up Malachi Lawrence. So I started looking into this guy. He's got size, speed. He's got all kinds of stuff. I feel like he's more of a second round guy myself,
Yeah.
but what are your thoughts on him, man?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's day 2 guy. I think he got a lot of hype down at the Senior Bowl because of, again, what he did, right, in terms of his ability. He's got a lithe body, quick first step. He's got good length. 33 and 5/8 inch arm length is what he measured in at the combine. Sorry, I ran a 4.52 40 with 1.59 10-yard split. So he's got that low 40-inch vertical. Talk about explosiveness. And I talk about a guy who's got the ability to kind of come around, bend the corner. In terms of the Bears, he's 6'4", 253 right now. Could you add about 5 to 10 pounds of muscle and still maintain some of that speed and that power? I think you can, but he's a guy that kind of lines up right now with what Austin Booker is. So if you have a guy like Austin Booker, now you got another kid that's more of like a guy that's going to need some time to develop. Now that's why I think he's a guy that if you bring him in, if you're a team that brings him in, whether you're a 3-4 team that's going to line him up in a 2-point stance, rush him off the edge, or if you're a 4-3 team, I don't think Malachi Lawrence can be a down in, down out, day 1, hand in the ground defensive end next year. Could he develop into that? Sure. Do I like some of his skills and traits? Do I like some of his athleticism and his length? Certainly do. Very intriguing kid, very intriguing prospect. But for me, when I look specifically for the Bears, I just think that he could be a duplicate of what they have with Austin Booker, and I don't know if that's what they're looking for, right? So that's why I think for me, Malachi Lawrence may not be a guy that they target. But in terms of where he's going to go, other teams, he's a lot of teams I've spoken, or not spoken with, but things I've heard from other teams. A lot of teams are high on him, right? So I think day 2, whether it's second round, third round, I think that's where he's going to go, day 2 for sure.
Yeah. Cliff says Caden, I believe it's pronounced Weegan from Iowa, has fallen off the charts, looking like a late round pick. Should the Bears grab him in the later rounds? He's a kick returner, punt returner type wide receiver out of Iowa. I've heard Tooch talk about him on Barfly Tailgate Show. I know you've talked about speedy playmaker type players. I feel like Caden kind of fits that. I know it's kind of early, and I'm sure you haven't dug deep into the tape. Do you have any initial thoughts on this player, though?
So he's going to fall into my dynamic playmaker category, and we're going to have a show in the upcoming weeks. Maybe next week. Well, next week I think we're going to hit cornerbacks, right? Or next show we're going to hit cornerbacks, and then the week after that we'll hit the dynamic playmakers because he'll fall into that category. Again, he gives you some special teams value. He gives you some ability in terms of making some plays, but I haven't dug deep into his tape, but he will probably make an appearance on this show when we dive into those dynamic playmakers that I'm telling you Ben Johnson wants to add on this offense.
When we cover dynamic playmakers, will that be wide receivers, some running backs? I guess
all
not
the
tight
above.
end, but
all the above.
All the above. Okay.
I mean, they're gonna probably draft a tight end as well. Now, will it be a dynamic one? I don't know because they obviously lost Durham Smythe. What will they kind of fill that role as with a veteran free agent? But obviously Smythe was more of that. Like third tight end, could line up in line, could come out as a backfield as a fullback lead blocker. So that's a position that they're going to look to fulfill. But I think that's something that they're going to look at. And they're going to look at guys that, can you make plays from this position down the field? Are you dynamic? I think there's a couple of receivers that I just knowing what they like and what they want. I think those are guys, you're going to look at and say, all right, these fit the category. One guy right away, bottom of the first round. I don't think the Bears will take him, but Casey Concepcion, as a guy that, I know he was plagued with some drops last year, but talk about a dynamic playmaker, guy that can give you some of that big play ability, speed down the field, give you some punt return ability as well. But those are some of the guys to kind of give you a little wet your beak here in terms of what we're going to talk about. Those are the kind of dynamic playmakers that I think Ben Johnson is looking to bring into that receiver room.
Yeah. Well, I know I subscribe to The Athletic and they do podcasts on there. And they had Dane Brugler on literally, I believe it was just this week, talking about the tight end position. And it is a deep class this year. So there's guys that we can grab late that could be some late round steals. I got one final question that'll kind of wrap this all up. Howie, our Bears came in late. And he says, late safety Jay Husky out of Maryland. Do you have any thoughts? I've been seeing him really late on mock drafts that I've ran. I don't know a ton about him though. What do you got?
Yeah, Husky I haven't done yet. He was one of the guys that I was had to get to, but I haven't had a chance to get to him for this week. So, but I will get to him. If you want, I could do a report and post it on Shimon Draft Scout, or we can just circle back if you want to note that that player in that question there, AC. On one of our future shows, we can come back and we can talk about Husky. But yeah, I haven't got to him yet.
Howie, I'll cover this one because I'm a Kentucky fan, native, season ticket holder. Kendrick Law, very good playmaker in space. Obviously, like you said, came from Alabama, went to Kentucky. The offense didn't go as planned at Kentucky this year, but when they did get Kendrick Law the ball toward the end of the season, good things happened as far as behind the line of scrimmage screens, however they could get the ball in his hands was good. He was a good kick and punt returner as well. Could be a late round steal for somebody who grabs him. He didn't run as fast of a 40 as I thought he did, because when I watched him play, it looked like he was outrunning guys that it didn't show on his 40. Maybe he's just not a track guy. I don't know. And he's saying he could burn him a running back. I don't know. But we've had a long show. Go ahead, Dave.
Law ran a 4.45 at the combine.
I thought it was closer to 4. I thought it was closer to 4.5.
Yeah, I'm seeing his numbers here. It's 4.45, 1.56, 10-yard split. So 42-inch vertical. So yeah, Howie, you're still in my thunder, man. We're talking about these. We're going to be talking about these guys under the Dynamic Playmakers show, and just tune in for that one. Tune in for that one, because we're be talking a lot of these guys, and I'm telling you, these are going to be the guys that the Bears are going to be targeting in this draft here.
Well, next week we'll cover corner. I guess the week after that we'll do Dynamic Playmakers. We'll try and get a guest or two between now and the NFL draft. But man, it's getting that time of year, Danny. We're turning the calendar over to April, and it's crunch time. So we're crunching the tape over here at Draft on Tap. But just everyone in the chat, thank you for tuning in. We got over 200 right now. If you could hit the like, we would greatly appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe to the Ballroom Radio Network and to Shimon Draft Scout on YouTube. Hit the notification bell to tell me when we go live. But from here on out, we're going to go every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central time. You got anything else, Danny? We're going to close this out.
Well, the one thing is, just a correction. I can't make next Monday because of a prior commitment. So in 2 weeks, we'll go Monday night, and then from there we'll go every week.
Got you. I'll make
Shimon Draft Scout, please subscribe, like. I've got the videos up there for my defensive ends, the defensive tackles. I got the centers up there. Gonna post some of these safeties up there as well. A lot of these guys that I'm talking about here on Draft on Tap, I'm going to be posting the full breakdown, with the highlights and with my overall analysis in terms of overall how I see them, how I project them at the next level. Obviously, everything's being scouted with the laser focus of the Bears and their scheme. So, if you don't see a player that, for example, if you don't see a Ruben Bain up there, it's because I don't think the Bears are going to get Ruben Bain. But plus, the other thing is I'm not even sure if he's a fit for Dennis Allen's scheme, but. That's a conversation we can have for a different day. But just kind of give you some. If you're not a subscriber or follower of Shimon Draft Scout, please do so. And that's where I'm going to be giving you a little more in-depth, a report on some of these prospects that I talk about here. Today we covered safeties real quick. I'll be posting some of these videos here, and I'll be going to a little more depth and a little more projection in terms of how I see them fitting if the Bears select these players. So Shimon Draft Scout, obviously on Twitter, I'm at dshimon56, and Draft on Tap, like AC said, like us, follow us, watch us. Please, we appreciate all the support and all the participation you guys give us week in and week out. Thank you.
Absolutely, that's the kind of coverage you get here at the Ballroom and with Shimon at Shimon Draft Scout. We're laser focused. how these fit in with the Bears. We're not worried about how they would fit on the Saints or how they would fit in the Packers or anybody else. It's all about the Bears here. So we'll just leave everybody with a bear down.